I help people reboot their health and fitness every day. And I believe that masculinity also needs a reboot. Men of my generation are suffering an existential crisis linked to their masculine identities and what it is to be a man. We don't know who to be, how to be, or what to be anymore. And I believe unless we can get this out in the open and find a way of discussing it, that we're only going to see more unhappiness, more wasted potential, and a greater rise in male mental health issues and suicides. This existential crisis isn't new. We're not some kind of special generation. However, we are the first generation with the capability to discuss this on such a broad scale. And I feel it is our responsibility to move the conversation forward. We already know men struggle to ask for help. I see it in my profession all the time. Men come to me when they're desperate, when their blood pressure's through the roof or their GP's told them they're so overweight they've got to stop playing their favorite sports. Only then do they accept there's a problem and seek out help. And I get it. As a man, you're supposed to know what to do. You're supposed to know how to be. You're supposed to have all the answers. And if you do need help, it's certainly not from another man. The attitude is very much, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. Except, what if it is broken and we just don't realize it? About 10 years ago, I was cycling through France with two friends, Jack and James. On our first day, we had about 100 kilometers to cover. The roads were clear, the weather was beautiful, yet Jack, an able cyclist, and a young, fit man, he's in the picture there, topless, was struggling. He'd been behind all day, and even on the downhill portions of the ride, he was having to pedal to keep up. At our final drink stop, with about 20 kilometers left to cycle, we discussed the idea of rethinking our entire trip. Jack was struggling so badly, he was really demoralized. And it was at this point that James offered to switch bikes with him for the last portion of the ride. After about 5 minutes of riding Jack's bike, James waved us down to the side of the road and said, "Guys, I think I found the problem." Pointing to Jack's rear wheel, it was now obvious for us all to see that in Jack's haste to prepare for the trip, he'd fitted his rear bag rack over his brake calipers. He'd literally been cycling for the last 80 kilometers with his brakes on. And while we had a good laugh about this at the time, Jack's experience teaches us a useful lesson. It shows us that we can be struggling on for a really long time without realizing anything is fundamentally wrong, and that sometimes it's not until we tell someone about it that we can get to the root of the problem. Personally, it wasn't until I hit rock bottom that I got the help I needed that's made the ride since a whole lot easier, yet still with its ups and downs. While I might appear to be a fit, happy, and successful man, throughout my 20s, I was running from myself. I dropped out of college twice. I'd really gone off the deep end. I had a chip on my shoulder, and I was insecure about my finances and my looks. And being the hairiest and spottiest kid in your school at the age of 12 will really do that to a guy. I'd started 2 businesses, both of which had failed. In truth, I didn't really want them to succeed. They were just filling a hole for me. I felt like I had to be doing something. I'd run up £10,000 in debt. I was on the brink of bankruptcy, and I drifted away from my friends and really lost my identity. I thought I'd wasted my life by not seeing through college and going on to university. And this came to a head one evening in 2015. I was 29 years old, single, living with my mum, unemployed, and for the last 3 hours, I'd been sat in my pants in my childhood bedroom, uncontrollably crying for no apparent reason. It was at this point I realized I needed to get some help. I didn't know exactly what I needed at the time, but I knew I needed something. I didn't have the vocabulary to be able to express what was going on, what I was feeling, or what I needed to do about it. And if I broke my leg, I knew where to go to see someone about that. If my car broke down, I knew where to go for that. But for this, I had no clue. In my desperation, I reached out to see a counselor. And during one of my first sessions, I walked in, as I'd always done before, sat down, and said, "Hi, how are you?" "Fine, thanks," came the response. And that was it. No, "How are you, Kieran?" No, "How was your weekend, Kieran?" Just total silence. And while this omission seems minor now, at the time, it was really shocking to me. And it left me with two options. Option one, I restart the conversation. Or option two, we sit there in silence until one of us breaks. And have you ever tried to sit in silence opposite a total stranger for 10 minutes? No, don't do it. It's torture. All these things run through your head. Why can't I think of anything to say? Am I broken? Why isn't she saying anything? Has she died? She hasn't moved or blinked in 10 minutes now. Why do I feel like I need to say something? Why am I paying for this? And maybe that was her intention, to get me to sit in my own discomfort. And as I sat there, I realized that what was really making me uncomfortable was myself. It made me think about how many of my daily interactions are utter rubbish, with fluffy niceties with little meaning or depth. And sure, such niceties, they have their place, but when do men talk about what's really going on? When do we talk about that? Why am I here? Why do I struggle to get out of bed in the morning? Why do I even bother trying? Do I like myself and my life? Have I even really looked at it? If I had to live the rest of my life as I am today, would I be okay with that? These are all questions I'd asked myself in the previous 10 years, except rather than actually looking for answers, I just buried them with TV, social media, alcohol, food, sex, whatever. Anything to make me feel better. Now, I've been with my counsellor for over 3 years now, and I'll probably keep going back for the rest of my life. I treat it as a workout for the mind and soul. When I leave, I'm as refreshed and energized as I am after a session at the gym. It's a really great feeling. Yet, even counselling hasn't overridden my programming. My fear of being seen as unmasculine. I didn't tell my family I was going counselling for 6 months. Most of my friends don't know. I guess the ones that don't are finding out right now. Yet, the more I share my story, the more I realize that there are many men out there suffering similar issues. Men who are unhappy yet not telling anyone. Guys who can't open up to themselves or anybody else. Mothers and girlfriends confused because their sons and boyfriends are unhappy despite seeming to have everything they ever wanted. And it's a funny phrase, isn't it? Having everything you ever wanted. I mean, how do you know what you want? As a guy, you're told from a young age what you should want. A nice family, a big house, a great career, a Ferrari. Yet, I know guys that have all of these things. Okay, maybe not the Ferrari, but who are still unhappy and who never address this unhappiness because it's not what they've been taught to do their entire lives. Instead, they do what they have been taught to do, and they bottle it up and they push it down. You know the top 2 questions I get asked, particularly by young men when they find out I'm a personal trainer? It's not, do you enjoy it? It's not, how did you get into that? It's not, do you find it rewarding? It's, how much do you earn and what do you drive? Like the only 2 indicators of your masculine identity are your bank balance and the car you drive. I drive a Kia Ceed, and apparently that's not cool. Women are much more adept at this stuff than we are. They find ways to talk about and share the important stuff, whether that be hour-long FaceTime calls, regular meetups with their girlfriends, or book clubs where the book doesn't end up being discussed at all. And the Centre for Suicide Prevention in Canada found that mothers talk to their girl children more than they do their boy children, and they share and express ideas and emotions more often. It's as if we're programming our children to grow up to expect women to be more emotional. It's so important that we make sure boys and girls grow up knowing that it's okay to share ideas, express emotions, and communicate openly. And as parents of the future, it's important that we do this when raising our children. We need to re-educate men as to what true value is. We need to create a supportive framework that complements the way men already communicate and works. As a keen sportsman and a personal trainer, I believe that team sports hold the key to this. Sherborne's a huge rugby town, so I'm going to use rugby as an example. As a rugby player, you know you're not supposed to be good at everything. You have your strengths and you have your weaknesses, and you play to your strengths. Mistakes are part of the game, losing is part of the sport, and learning, analysing, and adapting as you go is the name of the game. You'll win some games, you'll lose some games. And sure, some players will go on to be superstars. Most of us just won't be. In the game of rugby, if what you're doing isn't working, you don't stubbornly stick at it until the end of the game. As Scotland showed in this year's Six Nations tournament, you can be down and out at half-time, yet turn things around and make for a thrilling finale. As the game of rugby is 80 minutes long, a man's lifespan is pushing 80 years. We all know that a game of rugby isn't decided in the first 20 minutes, so why do we expect 20-year-olds to know where their life is going? Why are there so many 40-year-old men out there who've completely lost hope just halfway through their game when there's still so much time to turn things around and make for a thrilling finale? We all need to become more adaptable, more willing to change. If something isn't working for you, don't stubbornly stick at it. Try new things. Explore new opportunities. Have meaningful conversations and meet people that complement your strengths and balance out your weaknesses. So what can you do today to help you? Well, you could see a counselor, like I did. Let me warn you, though, it's a hard slog. It's not easy. I don't know many men that could sit one-to-one with a complete stranger once a month and bear all. It is hard work. If you'd like something more formal, you could join one of the many walk and talk sessions or men's groups that are popping up all over the UK. For something more local, sports teams and clubs are always on the lookout for new members. And as well as a chance to get out of the house, have fun, and get fit, it's a great opportunity to meet new people and have meaningful conversations. You can start a journal. Journals are great. They never answer you back. They never get distracted. You haven't got to feed them. And they'll never, ever tell anyone what you're thinking. I've had some of my best breakthroughs while keeping a journal. And I get it. There are probably men out there thinking, but what would I write? Because the man in your head tells you that you have to know what to write before you start. But you don't. Just write about what you did today and how you felt about it. Pretty soon, you'll be off and running. And if you think there's a man in your life that is struggling with some of these issues, then I have the following advice for you. Ask him how he's really doing, and then just listen. Don't offer advice. Don't compare his experiences to yours. Don't tell him things could be worse. And if he's not ready to talk, that's fine. Don't fuss. Don't get upset. Just let him know that when he's ready, you're ready. I want to leave you with something that I personally tell myself every day, and I'm constantly repeating to my clients all the time. And it's this. We're not aiming for perfection. Just be good enough most of the time. Thank you very much.